Once you have outgrown your startup and small market segment, then your needs are going to be very different. Generally, they are going to be around the territory alignment. So that's where you are going to require the mid-sized CRM systems. So which are the top 10 mid-sized CRM systems in 2024? That's what we are going to discuss in this video. So let's dive in.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Gupta. I am principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent CRM, ERP, and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients with the digital transformation strategy, CRM selection, as well as implementation. On that note, let's go back to today's topic, which is going to be the top 10 mid-sized CRM systems in 2024. Before we look at the list, let's define the mid-sized CRM segment in general. So we generally divide this in four different market segments. Number one is your startup. Number two is your small business segment. Number three is mid-sized. And number four is large. Generally, at mid-sized level, you are still not going to have as much budget as you might have with the large segment. So the budget constraints are still there, but at this point of time, you will need to consolidate the best of breed tools that you might be using in your CRM portfolio. You might have slightly more robust planning compared to your startup and your small business segment. So the CRM systems that are designed for this market segment are going to have slightly deeper capabilities. They are going to be more integrated in general overall from the capabilities perspective. They will require a lot more implementation consulting budget. The systems are going to be customizable as well, because at this point of time, you would probably need those. So generally, in this particular case, still from the CRM perspective, you are looking at just the customer facing workflows, even though you are consolidating all of those siloed data set from the CX perspective or from the CRM perspective. But again, this is going to be just limited to that customer layer where you are consolidating all of your customer touchpoints. Some of the CRM folks may argue that at this point of time, these might be slightly more ERP, but again, ERP is not going to be involved unless you are integrating your accounting workflows, your supply chain operations workflows. In this particular case, for CRM, that is not necessarily the intent. It is going to be all of the customer touchpoint, the omni-channel traceability from the channel perspective, whether the customers are going to be from the call center perspective or from the marketing automation perspective, pre-sales, post-sales, everything needs to be combined as part of these workflows. But again, just to be clear, these are going to be just the customer touch points as well as the customer facing workflows. So in general, these companies are going to be roughly 100 to 5,000 employees, and they might be somewhere in the range of 100 million to a billion in revenue. So that's how we sort of bucket these market segment. In terms of the capabilities, they are probably going to require your territory planning, complex sales comp. So the sales comp requirements are going to be far more complex as well. Before this market segment in the startup and small, the sales teams might not be as formalized. You might not have as many salespeople in general in the organization. But at this stage, you are probably going to have slightly more sophisticated sales comp. So you have to formalize your sales comp process, and they have to be enabled by your CRM system. So that's going to be a need as well. And then in some industries, you might also have the channel relationship management. We have seen scenarios where you require PDF, MDF centric workflows. So not everything needs to be automated from the system perspective, because some some of these processes may still remain manual, because if you try to automate all of those, then you might require the enterprise budget. So from the channel management perspective, some of those processes might still be manual, but other processes are likely to be integrated. The security becomes important as well, because when you are going to have so many employees, you need to have the appropriate privileges from the territory alignment perspective in terms of which opportunities you want to show it to the relevant folks. Some of the individual contributors are not going to have the same access. And to compile this list, we have a very specific criteria that we generally use. So that's going to be your product share. It's going to be acquisition strategy focused on the mid-market CRM category. And if they are acquiring something else, then we typically don't account for that. Then we have product roadmap, we have community ecosystem, win rate. How many logos are they winning in this particular market segment? If we see a lot more from the mid-sized perspective, then they generally rank higher on this list. Then you have technology strategy as well as investors. So now let's look at the list. Heat is relevant for the mid-market companies on budget. In general, the way this list is segmented and the way these CRM systems are segmented, some of them are going to be highly prescriptive. They are not necessarily designed for those customizable workflows, even though they might claim that. But in general, once you start implementing, then you would know how limited these CRM systems could be. And some of those limitations are going to be the way their custom objects are structured. They might have custom fields, but they might not have as many custom objects, or the hierarchy between those custom objects might not be as detailed. For example, in some industries, you might require parent-child relationship. And sometimes when companies claim that they have parent-child relationship, but the only thing they might have is just the association. So these are different capabilities that you are going to need. Some of the enterprise systems, some of the bigger systems that are going to be designed for transactional traceability, they are probably going to have all of those capabilities that you are going to find in slightly more seasoned programming language. They are going to have the similar capabilities from the business workflow perspective in terms of having those parent-child hierarchy for the custom objects. The other limitations that we generally see with the prescriptive CRMs is that the majority of the CRMs in the market, they are going to have the workflow automation. And generally, the workflow automation is going to rely on some of those triggers. So sometimes the triggers might be very detailed on the core objects, but they might not be as detailed on the custom objects. Also, the number of triggers that you might have in each of these cases might not be as many. Some of these examples could be that, okay, so you have trigger, let's say, for the email send, but you might not have trigger for object creation, or you may have for object creation, but you may not have for object delete. So these are some of the cases where you might run into issues that if you have to take any sort of actions once the business object has been deleted. For example, let's say if you have a custom object called building, or let's say equipment that you are trying to maintain, because you have to maintain this more from the customer engagement workflow perspective. Now, if you are going to delete that and you need to do any sort of computations, then that is probably going to run into challenges because you don't have that trigger built as part of the system, and then you are looking at many different workarounds. So these are some of the examples where you are going to find a lot of limitations with the prescriptive tools. Some of the other limitations that we have seen is overall the customizability even of the core objects. For example, some of the CRM systems may call this as more of the deal, but let's say in your case, you don't necessarily have deal. You probably call this opportunity or move, or whatever you call, and you simply don't want to rename. Some of these prescriptive systems might not be designed to be able to do that. So that's where you need to pay a lot of attention in terms of what is allowed. And in general, when you look at all of these prescriptive CRM systems, they are not going to have as much customization capabilities. And in general, with CRM, since as businesses are going to have different workflows, you do require that customizability. And if you don't have that, then you are probably going to run into challenges. Strengths that you have from Keep perspective is if you're in the healthcare vertical, then things such as your HIPAA compliance is going to be built as part of the system. But again, it's not going to be as detailed in general. The only thing they are going to have is maybe they are going to have a couple of fields where you can probably keep your patient information. But in general, when you look at the healthcare market segment, you are probably going to require far more detailed capabilities. You are probably going to require far more detailed object structure that Keep is probably not going to have that. The other strength Keep has is, even though it is a fairly smaller system, but they have the workflows built as part of the object structure. So let's say if you have to do any sort of marketing automation workflows, or you simply need to update any field, any based on any action, all of those are enabled as part of your Keep system. Building complex funnels is possible with Keep. Sometimes you are going to have those limitations as well, that and sometimes these limitations might not be technical. They might be more from the licensing perspective, depending upon the tier that you might be looking for. So let's say if you have the number of pipelines that you might be able to maintain, or the number of funnels that you might be able to maintain, or number of lists, sometimes the limitations are because of that as well. So you are able to build all of those funnels at least as part of your Keep system. Now, some of the other limitations that we are looking at from the Keep system perspective is limited capabilities for territory planning. And in this market segment, you are probably going to require all of those capabilities, but Keep is probably going to be limited just because the kind of security architecture that you have with Keep, the kind of capabilities that you're going to require from the territory planning perspective. Number one, they are not going to have those out of the box, and it's going to be really hard to be able to enable those. So that's where you need to look at slightly larger system if that is going to be your primary need. And then the sales comm capabilities are going to be fairly limited as well, because the target market for Keep is relatively smaller, even though they have workflow as well as the security, but those layers are going to be extremely limited. So again, you need to do your due diligence in terms of mapping your workflows. Okay, what kind of security workflows are you going to require? What are going to be different roles that you are going to be using, and which capabilities are you going to require? So you need to document all of those before you start evaluating Keep, and you need to ask very specific questions aligned with your workflow priorities, the way you plan to design the system. So that's number 10. Now, number 9 on our list is Zendesk Cell. And Zendesk Cell is a very similar system as your Keep. It's a relatively prescriptive, rigid model. It is targeted for that smaller segment. It's not necessarily the mid-market segment system, but we have seen a lot of logos in the mid-market as well that companies are able to use. And sometimes you need to read between the lines when these companies and the customers are able to use these systems in the larger segment. Sometimes they might be using it only for one division. So even though on paper they might have that, okay, $1 billion company is probably using Zendesk Cell, but they might have just one division that might be using it. So the scope is going to be limited. So in our mind, that is still going to be a relatively smaller scope in general. So the strengths that you're looking at from the Zendesk perspective is, just like your Keep, the interface is going to be modern. These are slightly newer systems, so it's going to be intuitive. When you look at that, then you're going to feel that it's probably going to be easier to use. But once you start using them, then you are going to run into issues in terms of the options that you are going to find. Then the other strengths that you have from the Zendesk perspective is the suite includes the customer service centric workflows as well. So if you have those touch points as part of your integration from the CX perspective, then you are going to have that. But the integration, that even though they are part of the same suite coming from the same vendor, but the integration is fairly light. And then the final strength you're going to have is implementation is going to be relatively easy and inexpensive. So the other limitations that you're looking at from the Zendesk perspective is the marketing automation capabilities are probably not going to be as rich as some of the other systems that we have on this list. And then just like your Keep, the territory planning capabilities are going to be fairly lean. And then sales comm capabilities, because they are slightly mature feature, they are going to be part of slightly bigger systems. So Zendesk, Keep, they are fairly smaller systems. So you are probably not going to have those. So that's number 9. Now, Now, number 8 on our list is active campaign. In active campaign in general, the way they started, it was more of the marketing automation system. So the way their design is, you are going to get a feel of that you are probably buying a marketing automation system. It's not necessarily CRM. The way their object structure is going to be designed, so they have grown their capabilities just like many other systems. They started as marketing automation, but they also have now the CRM capabilities. So if you are going to be on budget from the mid-market perspective and sending a lot of emails, and sometimes the way the pricing is done for these marketing automation systems, they might charge per email. So that's where Active Campaign is going to be slightly friendlier when you are sending a lot of emails, but you might not be as big. So their pricing might be friendly. But then we have also seen cases where the users are complaining that they have the steep increase in price. And that is something that we see generally with most of the marketing automation systems, that their pricing is always very tricky to work with. So either pay attention to that or hire a qualified consultant, such as your independent CRM consultants who can help you with the contract negotiation. Because in general, scoping of CRM is slightly trickier than other systems just because they are crafty at their pricing strategies. So the strengths that you're looking at from the active campaign perspective is the community enablement and engagement tracking. And the community feature is also very unique from the CRM perspective. You are going to find these features, for example, with Marketo. You might not find this with every other system. Salesforce is going to have that as well, but their community flavor is very different. In general, they are able to enable these communities from the Slack perspective. They also have the community portal, but here you are looking at more of the events. So all of that is bundled as part of the whole community engagement functionality. So if you are going to require that, then Active Campaign is going to have the omni-channel traceability also from the event perspective and the community perspective. So that is something to keep in mind. Then the other strengths that you have from the Active Campaign perspective is, as part of the bundle, you are getting CRM plus marketing automation, both of them. So if you care for that connectivity, that traceability, then this is going to be beneficial, even though the object structure is probably not going to be as rich as some of the richer CRM that we have on this list. And then again, the cost is probably going to be a factor for the bulk emails. And if that is a factor for you, then Active Campaign may be a great fit. The other limitations that we have from the Active Campaign perspective is the CRM data layer might not be as relevant from B2B perspective. And generally, the B2B businesses, especially, let's say, if they have those complicated scenarios where they need to keep the MDF fund, they need to do slightly more budget tracking, even though the budget tracking may not fall under the scope of CRM, you might require another either add-on or custom component that is probably going to do the analysis for you, but you would still require the underlying data layers. If you don't have that, then most likely you will have issues for your B2B businesses, especially for those complicated scenarios such as your BDF, MDF, when you are going to work with your channels, when you have a lot more layers overall from your sales and marketing operations perspective. The other limitations are going to be very similar to your Keep and Zendesk, that you are going to have limited territory planning or sales comp planning, which are going to be slightly more advanced capabilities that are going to be part of slightly bigger system. So that's number 8. Now, number 7 on our list is Sugar CRM. And Sugar CRM is going to be relevant for mid-market companies that are going to have slightly highly customizable needs. So the strengths that you're looking at from the Sugar CRM perspective is they have this whole BPM, and they are going to call this as more of the low-code, no-code workflow for the complex ad hoc use cases. That's where Sugar CRM really shines. Sugar CRM is going to have slightly more detailed object structure compared to your smaller CRM, such as your Keep or Active Campaign or Zendesk Sell. So this is going to be slightly richer overall from the customizability perspective. So your sales process is going to be slightly off compared to the mainstream sales process, where you have plain vanilla leads, accounts, opportunities. That's where you probably should be looking at your Sugar CRM, because then you have this sales process that is not going to be your generalized sales process that you would generally see with the CRM systems. That's where you are going to need a lot of customizability and configurability inside your CRM systems. And if you don't have those, then you are probably going to struggle. So the other strengths that we are looking at is that some of the modules may be harder to customize compared to the other CRMs that then we have the integrated project management module. Now, this is another layer that is very unique with some of the CRM systems. So, in some cases, some of the project management systems, they try to pretend that they are CRM as well. For example, let's say if you look at Monday.com or if you look at ClickUp, primarily they are project management apps, but they are trying to pretend that they can do CRM as well. But in general, their scope is going to be very limited from the CRM perspective. The only thing that they are really able to do is that they are able to create a basic funnel, basic traceability. That's not the entire scope of the CRM. When you are going to be a mid-market company, then you are going to need a lot more capabilities in general bundled as part of the CRM. So you would probably require a specialized CRM tool. Now, if your project management is going to be part of your CRM suite, that's probably going to be a great help, because in general, the project is going to have the state from the pre-sales perspective, also from the post-sales perspective. So in general, the project module that you are going to have inside CRM, they might not cover all of your post-sales project management workflows, because in post-sales, you are going to require a lot more capabilities from the finance accounting perspective, because you need to track your resource utilization, not only from the operational perspective, but also from the financial perspective. You also need to do a little bit of costing depending upon the industry you might be in. So overall, the post-sales project management generally resides inside a best-of-breed project management tool, or it's going to be inside your ERP system. But even in the pre-sales phase, you might have several projects depending upon how thick your pre-sales process might be, and that's where this whole integration of project management might be relevant from the CRM perspective, and Sugar CRM has that. Now, the limitations that we are looking at from the Sugar CRM perspective is the stability issues. So that's what we have seen with a lot of users, that they have reported that the Sugar CRM experiences a lot of stability issues. So sometimes that could be because you might have your own internal IT, and Sugar CRM can be deployed on your infrastructure as well, along with some other infrastructure. So depending upon how you are using, how you have implemented, sometimes the stability issues could be because of that. Then the integration and ecosystem is not as developed as you're going to find with some of the other CRM systems, and the marketing automation capabilities are going to be fairly limited as well. So that's number 7. Now, number 6 on our list is Pipedrive CRM. So Pipedrive CRM is going to be very similar to the other prescriptive CRMs that we have reviewed compared to your Zendesk Sell or Keep, but Pipedrive is going to have slightly richer capabilities for the mid-market companies. So the strengths that you're looking at from the Pipedrive CRM perspective is they also have workflow automation, but again, the number of features that you're going to have, the number of triggers that you're going to have from the workflow automation perspective, where all can you enable that workflow is going to dictate whether these workflow automations are going to work for your use cases or not, even though every single CRM systems in the world are going to claim that they all have workflow automation. They are going to claim that they have low code, no code capabilities. But again, this is going to be based on how many different triggers do you have, and are those triggers aligned with your use cases that you are going to require? And if you don't have those, then you are looking at a lot of workarounds, and then you are probably going to run into issues. The other strength that you have from the Pipedrive perspective is the look and feel is very similar as HubSpot. So you are looking for that HubSpot experience because maybe you have used that in your past life, but here you are looking at slightly smaller system compared to your HubSpot. You might be on budget, and that's why you might be choosing the Pipedrive CRM, or you might not get it. So at least the look and feel and the experience is going to be very similar. So you might not have as many change management issues, or you might not have as many training issues, depending upon what is the skill set of the user and what is their previous background. So that could be a great help overall from the Pipedrive perspective. Then they also have the reports and the goal setting, which is highly customizable. In general, most of the CRM systems, at least the mainstream ones, they are probably going to have great reports capabilities, but sometimes those might not be built. So you are looking at a lot of consulting dollars in building those reports. So one thing that you might want to do is write down every single report that you are going to be needing, build the spec of those, how many different data points do you guys need, and then where that data is going to come from. And that will help in an understanding, okay, what you are going to get out of the box and what you have to build, because that is what is going to dictate what is going to be your final implementation budget or the total cost of ownership. The other limitations that you have from the pipe drive perspective is the data structure might be weaker overall from the B2B company's perspective. Just like any other prescriptive CRMs, for B2B, they might not be as detailed, as rich from the data hierarchy perspective. Now, the some of the limitations that we generally see with CRM systems in this category is that data import and export functionality is going to be limited as well. So that is the limitation that we have with Pipedrive as well. And then finally, the limited customizability. So that's number 6. Number 5 on our list is HubSpot CRM. And this is also for the mid-sized companies that are looking for that upstream marketing. And generally, when you look at the workflows of the marketing department, you are going to have a lot of activities from the upstream marketing perspective, but you are also going to have the downstream marketing workflows. In general, if you talk to any of the CRM consultants or the companies, they pay a lot more attention overall to the upstream marketing, because from the marketing perspective or from the marketer's perspective, upstream marketing matters a lot more, but you still need those downstream CRM capabilities, because if you don't have the transactional correlation of different data set, then you are not going to get the traceability of your data points. You are not going to be able to keep the information where you have to keep and finally report based on that. So you are going to run into challenges. But let's say if your goal is to connect all of those channels from the sales and marketing perspective, and you are very thick overall in your upstream marketing, but you might not be as thick from your downstream marketing perspective, then HubSpot CRM could be a great fit. The strengths that you're looking at from the HubSpot CRM perspective is you have just one tool to centralize all of the customer channels, including your CMS. CMS is embedded as part of the same workflow, and that is going to have major lift overall from the experience perspective, because the large majority of your traffic is probably going to come from your website. So if you have CMS implemented as part of your CRM suite, then you are going to get a lot more traceability in general, a lot more control in terms of what you might be able to do with the incoming traffic in how to target them. And now HubSpot is also trying to enable some of these workflows where they are trying to either enrich the data from the data provider perspective, or they are trying to bring all of those data sets as part of the CRM as well. So you are able to do a lot more things in general. You can target those companies and you can bring them to your website. Then you can take certain actions. So you are continuously engaging not only with the existing visitors that you may have on your site, but sometimes you are also recruiting the newer visitors. So all of those use cases are possible from the HubSpot CRM perspective. The other strengths that we have from HubSpot perspective is the ecosystem and integration. You have a lot more options. In general, they have a lot of apps as part of their marketplace that you can use. The comprehensive options to integrate with CMS. So even if you are going to use, let's say, the third-party CMS, they still have a lot more flexibility in terms of providing you the forms, etc. Even though those forms may not be as detailed if you are going to have a lot of customer flows, but they at least have some support for the pop-ups, forms, etc. Now, the other limitations that we are looking at from the HubSpot CRM perspective is that the data model is not necessarily friendly for very complex operational use cases. The kind of use cases that you are going to see with your Salesforce, Microsoft, they have all of these layers built as part of your CRM. For example, let's say with Salesforce, they have the service packs for specific industries. And if you look at their object structure, that gets very complicated, complex in terms of how the data hierarchy is between all of those objects, insurance, financial services vertical, education, not-for-profit, public sector. These are the industries where you are going to require all of those capabilities. So that's where the data model is not as friendly for those complex, operational use cases. And these operational use cases are still, from the sales and marketing perspective, they are not necessarily the operational use cases from the supply chain or from the financial perspective. Now, the other limitations that you have is the customizability is very limited. You outgrow HubSpot pretty fast if you are going to look for very customizable CRM system. then you are also going to have very limited capabilities for your territory planning, sales comp, etc. And that's where the downstream marketing component is going to be relevant, where you are going to require a lot more data correlation, data structure, and that's where the likes of your Salesforce, Microsoft systems are going to be handy. So that's number 5. Number 4 on our list is Creatio. And you might not have heard of the system. So Creatio is a low-code, no-code tool. They have a lot of processes built, for the CRM workflow. So not only you can enable the CRM processes, but then if you are going to have more processes from your CX perspective, that's where you are going to get a lot more flexibility from the Creatio system perspective. So the strengths that you're looking at from the Creatio perspective is customizability and the integration and ecosystem. So you have a lot more flexibility in terms of what you might be able to integrate, what you might be able to explore in their ecosystem. And then you are also going to have the deployment flexibility. For example, let's say if you are tight on budget and if you care for the overall licensing cost and you are trying to deploy this in any other cloud, then they might be able to help you with that. The limitations that you're looking at from Creatio perspective is they are going to be fairly expensive because you would require a lot of consulting help. You would require solution architecture expertise to be able to enable these workflows, even though you can do that, but that does not mean that any business person can start on these workflows. And sometimes we notice that with low code, no code tool, the training and ramp up time could be as high and sometimes more than your programming languages. So that is something to keep in mind, that this is going to be fairly expensive. But let's say if you have a very customizable workflow in industries, for example, real estate or public sector, that's where you are probably going to require these capabilities because they are not going to have your traditional sales process. Their sales process is going to differ substantially. So that's when systems such as these are going to be helpful. Then the UI is going to be fairly clunky. And then you have to build all of those boilerplate that you're going to find with systems such as your HubSpot or Salesforce. And the marketing automation is probably not going to be as intuitive as you are going to find with the other CRM systems. So that's number 4. Now, number 3 on our list is Zoho CRM. And this is great for mid-market companies that are looking for slightly more, operational CRM, transactional capabilities from the downstream perspective. They have the upstream marketing capabilities as well, but they are not going to be as rich as your HubSpot. For example, let's say if you look at the CMS capabilities are far richer with HubSpot, they are not going to be as rich with your Zoho CRM. And the integration and ecosystem is not going to be as rich as well in terms of using different best of breed technologies, especially from the upstream marketing perspective, because you have to work with all of those ad vendors. You have to work with, the telephony vendors, and these are some of the integrations that you are going to require. So yes, Zoho has a lot of integration inside their app itself or the portfolio itself, but they don't have as many integrations as you are going to find with the likes of HubSpot or Salesforce. So the other strengths that you're looking at from the with perspective is the data model is very similar to your Salesforce to build the complex workflows. And then you are going to have a lot more detailed capabilities to be able to build those complex scenarios such as your sales comp planning or territory planning, user security workflows. All of those things are going to be much easier from the Zoho CRM perspective. And then you are going to have much tighter integration with the Zoho apps, even though they each you have their own databases. So these all apps are going to be fairly siloed in general, but you can transport data if you like. So you are not going to find the same embeddedness that you will find with some other systems if they were using or they were deploying this inside one database. So here you can still communicate, but that communication is going to be very light. It's not going to be as tightly embedded as you will find with some of the other apps, where if those apps might be deployed as part of the same data model, same database. With the limitations that you're looking at from the Zoho CRM perspective is that not as integrated in the upstream ecosystem and not as open ecosystem as HubSpot HubSpot, they try to promote slightly more open systems. So Zoho is going to be slightly more closed. Their goal is to sell as many of their apps as possible. That's what they are trying to do. So that's probably going to be a limitation. And then you would require consulting help to be able to implement, because in general, Zoho CRM is going to be slightly more complex overall from the layers perspective. So that's number 3. Now, number 2 on our list is Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE. And this is a very complex CRM to be able to enable those customizable workflows. So this is if you are looking for those enterprise-grade capabilities, especially with the advanced processes such as your sales comp planning, territory planning, etc. That's where your Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE is probably going to be the right system. So the other strengths that you're looking at from the CE perspective is customizability is a big factor. So you can customize, you can override different business objects. You can create your own. You can build whatever interactions that you will be able to build with your programming language or the custom app that you are able to do with Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE system. Then they also have integration with your field service workflows. That is something that you might not be able to find with slightly smaller CRM systems. But for some of the industries, for example, let's say if you look at insurance or the residential service workflows or industry 4.0, in those spaces, you are probably going to require integration with your post-service field service workflows, because that is part of your customer touchpoint sales process. That's why you need that. So Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE is going to the workflow, sales comment, territory planning. All of those capabilities are going to be far richer in general compared to the smaller CRM systems. The limitations that we have from the Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE is the upstream marketing integration might be challenging. You have several tools available as part of your Microsoft Dynamics 365 portfolio, but they might not be as tightly integrated. You are dealing with many vendors, so you have options, but then they are not provided by the Microsoft. So that's where you need to do a little bit more due diligence in terms of how they are going to work together, what kind of vendor issues or risks you are going to have in your model. The other limitation that you have with this is, since this is a very sophisticated CRM, so you are going to require a lot more consulting help in general. If you have those customized workflows where you don't have the plain vanilla sales process, then you would probably require a lot more development help, consulting help to be able to enable those workflows. So you might want to create budget for that. And then limited marketing automation capabilities, even though they are going to have some marketing automation capabilities, but they are not going to be as detailed as what you are going to find with, let's say, the likes of HubSpot, Marketo, or Active Campaign. So that's number 2. Number 1 on our list is Salesforce. And Salesforce is great for mid-sized companies looking for the comprehensive suite for the enterprise-grade capabilities. And the right comparison for Salesforce is probably going to be Microsoft Dynamics 365 CE. They have fairly comparable capabilities for very detailed sales ops planning, rev ops planning. So the strengths that you're looking at from the Salesforce perspective is the industry packs are going to be built as part of the suite. You can buy them directly from Salesforce, but keep in mind that those industry packs could be number one it as well. And if you have to do any sort of customization on top of that, that could be a challenge, the way they might be constructed, the way they might be built. So even though they have the industry packs, but they might not be usable all the time. So again, even with industry packs, what you need to do is how far off are you from your data hierarchy perspective or from the process perspective to be able to understand if those industry packs are going to work as is for your workflows. And if they are not going to work, then you are probably looking at very custom build on top of the core Salesforce platform, which could be fairly expensive in general. But at least you have the data model that can support all of those workflows. So that's where Salesforce is going to be really strong. In general, the workflow security that you have with Salesforce is enterprise grade. So you are probably not going to run into any sort of challenges, regardless of how many different layers you have in your sales organization and what kind of security you need. You should be able to accommodate. Number one, those workflows easily, and that's where Salesforce really shines. And then territory and sales comp planning is probably not going to be a problem with your Salesforce as well. They have fairly sophisticated capabilities for those. The number one limitations that you're looking at is that the data model is probably not going to be as relational as your Microsoft Dynamics CRM, even though it's going to have far deeper data layers compared to your HubSpot, etc. But even Salesforce is not going to be as detailed as your Microsoft Dynamics CE. So depending upon which industries you are implementing this for example, let's say we have product-centric industries or where you require very hierarchical data layers. If you have that need, then Microsoft may be a better choice. And if you don't have that, then Salesforce may be a better choice. So depending upon which industry, what are going to be your use cases, what kind of hierarchy you are going to require in your data model, that's what is going to dictate which system is going to be the right fit for. Number one. So then the one of the limitations that we have from the Salesforce perspective is that the marketing automation workflows are not as embedded as you are going to find with the likes of HubSpot. And that's why you will see companies using your another marketing automation tool with Salesforce. It could be Marketo or HubSpot that they generally use with Salesforce. So that is going to be a challenge. And then Salesforce is going to be fairly expensive overall from the consulting perspective, also from the licensing perspective. So that's number one. If you enjoyed this video, we are also going to include a detailed article that is going to have much deeper insights. So you might want to look at that. And then we publish these videos on a weekly basis. So if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, we encourage you to do that. And then finally, this podcast is also available in the audio form. So you might want to check on Apple, Spotify, etc. It's available pretty much on every single podcasting platform. And then we also publish our digital transformation report every year. So if you have not checked the 2024 version, you might want to do that. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.